think it was early 1985 when Boston George was arrested for the last time for trafficking a large amount of cocaine. The DEA thought that I was one of his associates. Stay tuned, this story is pretty bizarre. I'm the Saipan Sailor, and this is LA Confidential. All right. Well, I want to start this story in Hong Kong, actually. There's some things I missed in my last segment. Back in the 80s, the early mid 80s, when I was sailing over there on the Sealand D9s, there was this club. I believe it was on Nathan Road. I'm not sure, but it was in Kowloon. The name of the club was Bottoms Up. Now that particular location is where one scene from A Man with a Golden Gun, that James Bond movie, was shot. And that's what made that club famous. But for us sailors, everybody had to go there at least once. Well, when you walked into this place, you walked into a round room that was all mirrors. The walls were all mirrors. And there were two other rooms adjacent to that room that were also the same size, they were round. And there was a round bar in the middle and a hostess that sat in the middle. You talked to her. And they had this drink called the Typhoon, if I remember correctly. And if my memory also serves me correctly, you couldn't make it through one drink. You were teetotal. The thing about the place, I believe the bar turned also on a turntable. So if you got up to leave, when you walked in the place, you had your bearings straight because you're looking right at the bar. But when you got up to leave, you couldn't find your way out because it was all mirrors. Anyway, during the 90s, when I started sailing over there again, wasn't into clubbing. It was the dawn of the computer age. So I went out to the Wan Chai district to what they called the Golden Computer Center. And I put together a computer there once, and I also bought, on the bottom floor, they had all these vendors selling pirated software. This was the time when Windows 95 and Windows 98 came out. And there was just a ton of software. They copied everything. And it was pretty bizarre because walking through either the ground level or the basement level, I noticed that all these vendors had their software on carts, on wheels. And there was a little space behind them with a roll top door. And I was walking through there one night when all of a sudden I was looking at some software, and this one vendor just, all of a sudden, everybody sprung into action. This vendor pushed me away. He said, go, get. And he wheeled his cart back inside, pulled down the roll top door, and so did everyone else. And within seconds, that place was in complete lockdown. It was like a ghost town. And I was left standing there looking around. Obviously, because pirating software was illegal, and they must have had scouts on the outside looking for the cops. They must have got a signal that the cops were coming. They knew they were selling software there, but they just didn't want to get caught or get harassed by the police. I had to come back about an hour later. That was when I was living in Ventura, California. I came home with a stack of software. But getting back to the 80s, I used to buy suits from this clothier, these tailors that had their shop on the basement level of the Hilton Hotel. And I bought a bunch of suits. And I mean, these suits were something right out of the early 80s, the late 70s. If I had a picture of how I was dressed then, I'd laugh today. But I would laugh even harder compared to the way we dressed when I was in high school in the early 70s. Well, when I got off the ship that I stayed on for about a year, I went home to Florida, visit my father for a few months. I was home 2 or 3 months. When I was ready to go back to work, I booked a flight from Miami. My father, he lived in Bradenton, and I think they just had a domestic airport there, just puddle jumpers. And I would fly from Bradenton to Miami back to LA, and I'd register at the Union Hall there. So I booked a red-eye flight because they're cheap, and got on a plane in Miami, or in Bradenton, flew to Miami. They changed flights there, and I was wearing one of those suits, and the alligator shoes, and all this gold jewelry. I had long hair, mustache. Yeah, I actually had hair on my head back then. When I got to LA, got off the plane, went to the terminal, to the carousel, got my luggage. I just had one duffel bag with my work gear in it, and a suitcase with my street clothes and other items. So I went outside. No sooner than I got out the door, I felt a hand on each arm. And a cop car came pulling up to the curb, and these two guys that were plain clothes flipped their ID. They were DEA agents. And they said, "Excuse me, sir, not to alarm you, but we swear you look like somebody's brother." Now immediately I figured, okay, the way I'm dressed, I flew from Miami, but they're looking for somebody. And they think I'm tied into whoever they're looking for. So they wanted to check my luggage. So go ahead, knock yourself out. They went through my bags. Like I said, I had work gear in one and street clothes in the other. They said, okay, pretty good. And they just walked away, and the cop car drove away. And I was left standing there going, what the heck was that? Well, I was going to take a shuttle into Long Beach, but I decided to walk down the end of the terminal, and I got on, I think it was a 232 or the 456 bus, and I rode that all the way into Long Beach. And I got off the bus in front of Denny's. There was a Denny's on Long Beach Boulevard, downtown Long Beach. And back then they were open 24/7. They're not anymore. But back then they were. And by that time it was about 4 or 5 in the morning. So I walked into Denny's, had breakfast, hung around, drank some coffee for about an hour or so. It was about 6, maybe 7. I took another bus into Wilmington, and I think that was a 232. Back the other way. Got off the bus, walked to the hotel, and checked in. I didn't want those guys tailing me. You know, I didn't think they would. But if they were going to, I was going to keep them up all morning. Now, for a lot of years, I always wondered, who the heck were they looking for? You know, somebody's brother? Well, a few years back, I watched that movie with Johnny Depp. It was called Blow. And then I realized that's who they were looking for, George Jung, or they called him Boston George. And it was right around that time, late 84, early 85, when he got sent to prison for the last time. I said, that has to be it. They must have been on the prowl, because I flew from Miami, like I said. I was dressed, and I looked just like he did, almost. Well, I had to get those stories out, especially that one. I always got a kick out of it, though. That's all for today, folks. I'm the Saipan Sailor. Clear skies and calm seas, everyone.